Hey fellow Helldivers, welcome back, and boy do we need to talk about the state of the game. I'm making this video because I truly love Helldivers. I love the community, I love the gameplay, I love, just kind of the role-playing within the universe. It's always been so much fun for me, and I've been playing Helldivers since Helldivers 1. I was here for the start of Helldivers 2, I was there at Malevolent Creek, the attack on Super Earth, and now recently O'Shane or Oshani, however you say it, I have no idea. But all that is suffice it to say that we know that there are a ton of issues going on within the game, and as a Helldivers 2 content creator, I felt that it was a little bit on me to kind of discuss this, address what the Arrowhead devs are talking about for, their roadmap and all the known issues, as well as all the other needs that the game has, to continue the longevity of the game, improve its quality of life, but then also, sprinkle in a couple of my own personal wants to make the game better. So let's dive in and talk. So I know that you've all experienced it just as I have as well. The crashes, the performance issues like stuttering, animations getting all messed up, textures blending into each other, all the disconnections that we're getting. Arrowhead is aware of this, and I know it's been super frustrating for myself and the rest of the community, and, it's super justified that we're feeling a little pissed off right now at, the state of the game, because at the heart of it, it truly is such a fun game to play, and we know that if things can get polished over, it'd be a lot smoother of an experience. We know that a lot of it is at the fault of the current engine because it's not fully supported these days, and that has been a big problem and an ongoing problem, and, shout out to the Arrowhead devs because they do wonders with an outdated engine, but there's still so much more to do that they need to take care of. And good news is, according to, Baskinator's latest message, they do have a plan in the short term to address some commonly known issues, but the bad news is, friends, that there are a lot of performance issues that are not a quick turnaround, that will take a longer period of time. So let's quickly go over the good news first. Okay, so according to Baskinator, mid-October-ish is when we're going to start to see the first changes being addressed. And that's going to start to fix some of the key crashes that we've been experiencing. I know myself, I will definitely get disconnected. I'll be streaming, I'll be doing some content, and then I hard crash, and it's super annoying, and I have to go back in and restart everything. And nobody wants that. So I'm glad that some things are going to be fixed over there, because it's been pretty egregious lately. They're also going to be working on some of the audio issues, and we could see this happening with the primaries and sidearm audio because it's desyncing out of missions. Sometimes, you'll hear bugs, but you won't hear your guns, or you'll hear stratagems, but you won't hear something else, and it's been, again, super annoying. There's also the ambiguous minor performance improvements. Hopefully that's going to help out with things like the animation textures deloading, or clipping into different animations, or, just full-on de-rendering and going to polygon mode, which does happen from time to time. There is also going to be some other bug fixes that have been known for a long time, like the frickin' quiet charger footsteps. I swear, if I get rolled up by another quiet charger that just is going to assassinate me, I'm going to scream. So I'm glad that this is being addressed and it's going to fix itself. And then with the new problem that we've had with the cave system, no more landing on top of caves. I cannot tell you the amount of times that I've landed on a cave, or my frickin' stratagems land on a cave, and I either have to jump to my death because it's too high to stem, or, I have to run back out and call in a new stratagem to get my gear. And again, I just want that change, so I'm glad that's being addressed. But then they'll be releasing an overall balance pass. So they're unleashing to the people that were spearheading the previous kind of, I believe it was a 60-day or a 90-day kind of roadmap initiative. So they're being unleashed for the balance. Hopefully that does not mean nerfs. We do not need more nerfs for our game in terms of our guns. Please, if anything, balance it so that we're doing more damage and that the enemy, has a little bit better behavior. So that's some quick things on the good news, but for the bad news, as there's going to be a wide array of other performance issues, it's not a short turnaround as we've found out, but we'll be getting more news, and they are promising better transparency over time. So let's hold them to their word. Let's make sure that we can voice our concerns as we always do to get them to be more transparent, and hopefully they own up to that promise and they will deliver. And then, of course, lastly, for like the war bonds and the different updates that we'll be getting, there is some more news about that. Shams himself was talking about bringing back in, at least we'll plan to bring back in the kill zone content, but also taking a look at maybe bringing some balance to the current legendary war bonds and the latest content update. But more on that to come, and we'll keep our eyes very, very close on this. Okay, so since we were just talking about, performance updates and bringing balance to the game, I wanted to further get into the weapon balance. So, the Arrowhead devs have been very much focused on what we would call grunt fantasy, and that is going to be where you're always on your back foot, you feel somewhat underpowered, you're getting killed a lot, it's kind of hell for you, and that goes and plays into the concept of Helldivers, and it works at times very, very well. But then there's other times when your weapons just aren't performing the way that they need to, or there's been needless nerfs on the weaponry themselves to just kind of, make your situation harder than it has to be. And we don't want to creep too far into the power fantasy where we're just so overpowered and too OP to take on everything, so there needs to be a happy medium found between those. So, I first want to give, as justification to this, the Coyote gun that happened in the Dust Devils War Bond. Now, that is a perfect example of we were given a gun that performs above average and does its job. It has good medium armor penetrating, it has the incendiary bullets for taking on enemies, but it doesn't have a huge clip, and it does really has, some drawbacks to using the weapon at times from time. But because some of the other primaries are underperforming, the Coyote just kind of feels like a standout. It feels like it's so much better of a weapon, and as a community, we're like, all right, we have this meme going on. Don't tell the devs that it's good. Protect this at all costs, because we don't want another nerf happening to our primaries, as we've seen time and time again. So what I am suggesting, and what many others are suggesting, is that, hey, rather than tooling down guns like the Coyote, why don't we buff the other weaponry again? We don't need to make, everything needlessly harder. We don't need to have our bullets constantly bouncing off. I understand that we always want to keep our things of light, medium, and heavy armor penetrating, but we could be doing a better job about bringing balance to the guns and figuring out, hey, how do we make things perform better so it's just more fun? Because at the end of it, friends, that's what we're trying to do. We want to have fun. We don't want to feel like there is always a meta for weapons, because people have been feeling that there is a meta. I know for myself, I like to do tons of builds, so I could kind of try to make anything viable depending on the situation and regardless of difficulty, and I like to show that off. But just to make the entirety of the community feel a little bit better about their experience, why not make everyone happier and buff those weapons? I know I'm not the only one thinking that, so let me know your thoughts on that one. Okay, and also to not neglect the red-headed stepchild in the weaponry family, the frickin' melee weapons. Please, for the love of God, fix them back to what they were at. Before, using melee felt great. It was still very niche for it to, not do too much of a difference on the battlefield. Not a lot of us used melee weapons, but I myself loved using them. I do entire builds around them, and they were so much fun to use. You'd cut down enemies. They had the unintended heavy armor penetrating, but again, it was so niche that it really didn't make an impact. So why take away our enjoyment and a fun play style and make it way less viable? Because, Arrowhead, it was already so risky for us to be charging the enemy with a sword or a spear that it should be a high-risk, high-reward situation. So please, please, please fix the issue that you have by tooling down and debuffing these weapons. It needs to go back to where it was. But then also something that's going to very much help them is going to be better weapon animations. There's too few going on right now, and you kind of get, diminishing returns on certain strikes due to the animations, and if you can give us maybe a combo or two, or change things up from weapon to weapon a little bit more, that will definitely help. Alright, next up is a big one, and I will preface it by saying it's a little controversial to be talking about, because there's a host of issues going on in the back end that's preventing this from carrying on and progressing. But that is going to be, the slowed pace and not enough narrative changes and consequences to the overall battlefield. Too many times for the sake of, Arrowhead needing to have more developing time because production takes a long time, and obviously there's a lot of bugs getting in the way of that. We will trade back and forth planets that really have no consequence on the overall galactic map or just for a quick major order. But then just as we're making progress on a certain front, we are getting attacked from another side and we have to focus completely over here. So we're just kind of, playing whack-a-mole in the galactic theater because Arrowhead, of course, needs time to, build up assets. And that's why we haven't been able to go to places like Cyberstan or the home world of the bugs or, chase the Illuminate through the black hole and go fight them in a certain area as well. And I do know that there's other big things happening, like the different factory worlds that will come into play and other new units coming in, but there just needs to be more overall narrative consequence. We absolutely loved how pivotal Malevolent Creek was, or the Meridia Black Hole event coming through, or, even the Gloom happening. That felt really big and fun, but they're too far and few in between. But then also, we need to understand very clearly what is our consequence on the war to the galactic map. I want clear lines of strategy going through that make sense, that we could feel that, hey, at the end of the day, there is an end in sight to the galactic war, as it was with Helldivers 1. You could actually finish the war, friends. I know that might be news to everybody based off of how we've been experiencing in Helldivers 2, but you can actually kill off a faction and then continue on to the next faction, and then there would be a global reset. And that's what we want. And talking about overall knowing the consequence on the map, I'm going to get into that a little bit more of kind of like a want that I have for the game, but I'll put a pin in that for now. Okay, so another thing that needs to be addressed is going to be the current limit cap on our resources for our requisition and our samples. This also might be a little controversial because super credits I would obviously like to bank more of, but I understand from Arrowhead's perspective that it's a premium currency that you would get to use to buy the war bonds, and it's how they make more money, but at the same time they're kind enough to allow us to farm them. I just think maybe that cap could be increased just a little bit so it doesn't feel like we're banking too much, but maybe a little bit more would help. But we definitely need an increase to our other resources. The requisition goes too quickly and the samples go too quickly. And when you finally, buy everything in the ship, there's no more things to spend them on. So obviously we're going to need more ship modules coming out that we could spend on that. And I know that you also have a plan to bring in and introduce different sample types. So as long as there is a clear need for them, I'd say that's all cool, but we'll find out more about that. But just allow us to bank more, because I'll get into this also later in kind of my wants category for the game and how to utilize this better. But if we were able to find a better purpose for those samples aside from the ship modules, I think that could add to the quality of life, and I will touch on that. Okay, it's about damn time also that a new NPC was added to our ship. And not just any NPC, a frickin' strategy officer needs to be added on every single Super Earth Destroyer, friends. We have our democracy officer, we have our frickin' shipmaster, and we have the engineers in the background. This person needs to be standing next to the battle map so that they can be talking us through as we're selecting, what are the clear lines of attack, besides obviously the major order that directs your vision of like, oh, okay, this is an important front. We need this to progress whatever narrative or to get whatever resource. The strategist can help us figure out, well, if you attack this planet and this planet and this planet and these lines, you'll eventually get to X homeworld or X major kind of target that we need to cover. But then also, it could be fun when you are selecting on the map. This is maybe for the newer players. They don't always know where to drop in, and the strategist can be like, yeah, that's not a good spot, buddy, or hey, I think that you can go over there. You can have some fun with it, add some comedy flavor into it, obviously. But having a strategist on ship, I think, would be such a wonderful quality of life thing to have. And I know many other people have kind of talked about this with me in my own community, so let's get that added, friends. Okay, so on to the wants category of our video. Now, this is going to be my aspirational wants for the game, but I honestly think this is going to add heaves and throws to the game in terms of longevity and quality of life and just overall more fun. So let's get into the first one. So the first one that I have, friends, is going to be a better use for our resources. Again, once we hit that level cap, we really have nothing else to do with it besides, donating it to the DSS, which sucks, by the way. So I'm proposing a new feature to the game for it, and that's going to be able to be using it on the battlefield directly from when we're collecting it. So let me get into that. So as we pick up our different resources, like our samples, our requisition slips, maybe even super credits, but hopefully not those, we can bank them into a certain terminal slot, and then when we want, we could call in certain one-time use stratagems where it would cost X amount for that stratagem to be used, and they'll be, again, one-time use planetary, like how this thief artillery cannon is limited use as well. It could be something similar to that, and I think it's proven to be able to be used by a similar game, and that is going to be Warhammer Space Marine 2, where they have terminals as well in their siege mode. Now within siege mode, friends are able to bank up points over time from wave after wave, and then you could call in something like, more men, a dreadnought, things like that. So I'm proposing something similar. And certain one-time use stratagems that I'm thinking that'd be super helpful would be calling in siege reinforcements, calling in a version of the Pelican that hovers and stays around and shoots the enemies, calling in a radar-targeted bombardment to an area of the map so we don't need to be close to call it in. We'd be like, hey, you know what? Super Destroyer, this guy with all your guns, please bombard this area because it's locking me down and I need help with it. So certain things like that could be a lot of fun, and we could talk about many, many more, one-time use stratagems, but I think that'd be a perfect use for us to have more fun with the game and give us another purpose for our resources, but let me know what you think. So continuing the dialogue about stratagems specifically, I think there could be the inclusion of some new ones that could really help with things, and I know that there's been some fan-ass ones as well. So something that I brought up many times with my own community, and it's very much resonated with them, and other people have given me their ideas as well, are going to be more team-based stratagems. So again, like how the siege cannon and anti-air are kind of a team-based stratagem where everyone can use it, this would be something that we can either do as a one-time call-on or it has a long refresh rate, but it's for the use of everyone. Now, my first idea for this is going to be an embattlement for 4 people to use. Just imagine you call in something when you are on exfil or when you're really bogged down, and a little micro embattlement drops down with different guns in place. Like, how we have the little wall that shoots the grenade launchers? Why not get something that has a laser cannon on it, or a missile launcher, or a machine gun, or grenade launcher together as a 4-person embattlement? And it's not going to be super OP, but it'd be fun to use and very viable, and I think would add a ton of fun. Another one that I think could be super useful is that people have been asking for a new armor type, and that could be not quite like a mech call-in, like a new mech, but this could be the use of a call-in for Juggernaut or super heavy armor class call-ins. I know you're not going to make a ton of different armors for this potentially, but think of like power armor fantasy. This could be akin to a super Juggernaut class with like a heavy machine gun type deal being called in, or something similar to like Fallout power armor, or even, friends, I know this is very unlikely to happen, like similar to Space Marine armor, like that's super thick ceramite armor. Now again, these would be limited use cooldowns, similar to how the mechs are, but I really don't think it would make us too OP. I think it very much fits thematically into the universe that we have already, and it opens up the doors for even more collaborations, which I will get into, friends, but I think that could be a ton of fun to do for us. And then this is really kind of, out there off the wall, but I've talked about it. I've had people bring this concept to me constantly. People kind of want like a Megazord type of mech that we can use. And the way that I think it could be potentially possible is that every person would have to have a mech stratagem slot that they would sacrifice for a call-in, and all the mechs fuse into one larger mech, and one person's the pilot, one person's guns, one person is movement of some other sort or whatever, and you can figure it out, whatever. But suffice it to say, I think like us having something on par with the size of the Factory Strider, and obviously it would have a lot of weak spots to it too, but could be so much fun to use. But let me know your thoughts on that as well. And last up for the stratagems, I promised, last up for the stratagems, this is going to be the justified need for a different way to call in stratagems, and could be opening up the road to other stratagems and opening up the road, friends, to another potential collaboration. So let me get into that. So because we now have cave systems and calling in stratagems is complete crap and they land where we don't want or we can't call them in at all, I think that we can make a very proper case for other stationary items to be picked up, how there are different weapons on the map to be picked up from a support thing, or subterranean assets like different stratagems that are buried in the ground that we get to a certain area and we can call them up from the ground. Especially, well, this would probably have to only happen on planets that we own or once owned, so that the asset was in place. But how cool would it be, like, I'm in the cave system and I'm like, oh my god, I really could use X. And then I'm able to summon it up from the ground, and it's not going to be an orbital strike, it's not going to be an eagle strike, it's going to be a different type of supportive weapon or supportive gear, or, you know, something of good use that might be an explosive or something that comes up out of the ground. Now, friends, I know what you're thinking. This opens up the opportunity of, well, how would that be delivered to us, Ox? I have an idea for that. And this opens up an idea for collaboration that I know is on frickin' Pilostat's radar and Arrowhead's radar, and that is a collaboration with Deep Rock Galactic. And so, you know, Rock and Stone friends, those dwarves can be the ones coming out of a drill from the ground, giving us our gear. It could be a whole freaking narrative thing, and maybe we're not playing as the dwarves themselves because that might be harder for them to map out because of the different heights and whatnot, but we can get Deep Rock Galactic Warbond and gear based off of this, and then, of course, they bring us those subterranean stratagems. I think that it perfectly fits the narrative setting and makes total sense in those cave systems. And then, of course, you know, maybe we can use them on other planets that don't have caves if it works out really well for us. But I think it'd be a lot of fun to use. Again, let me know your thoughts. So continuing the talk about collaborations and on my want list, of course, is something that's been alluded to and definitely on the radar again of Arrowhead, and that is going to be a collaboration with the Warhammer universe. But obviously, it's a very tricky balance to get it right. They don't want to give us everything, but at the same time, I think that there is a road to make a lot of it included. So we do know that Pilstat would be very interested in bringing like the Astra Militarum. Those are like the regular human soldiers on the battlefield, so they're very similar to Helldivers. There's a ton of gear that they could bring into the battlefield as well. But we also know, friends, from the data mine files, there is a chainsword, and we do have placeholder imagery for it as well. So I think it's probably within the realm of happening for us. So if that does happen, that opens the road for other things I've talked about. So, you know, that power armor column that I've talked about, that is either one-time use or limited use, like the battle mech, that could be the road for having Space Marines, like a Astartes style armor, of course, in the Helldivers kind of style, brought to the map. So we're not quite, you know, hulking Space Marines with all the different abilities that they have, but we do have sick power armor. So I think that might be a cheeky way about adding in more from the 40k universe. But also, friends, I think that there is a road for adding in more units. So obviously there are a ton of different units for the enemies that are inspired by different genres, from Starship Troopers to 40k to Star Wars and other things. If we're taking a look at, you know, one that's from 40k, look no further than the Automaton Hulk that looks just like a Dreadnought from Warhammer. You could bring in other faction units to the game that are inspired by Warhammer with this collaboration, and I think other collaborations should do the same as well. So if you know about the Necrons, they are basically very similar to the Automatons and Helldivers. So the Necrons from the 40k universe are robotic, have metal bodies, and everything like that. There could be the inclusion of some of those units on the automaton front. On the Illuminate front, I think that the Tau army, because they're very kind of similar in their aesthetic and their, culture, that would make a lot of sense to bring units from them, as well as if you want to go more cosmic horror again, you could bring a little bit of Dead Space in there. You could bring maybe some warp demon type things that look like flesh mobs into it. Of course, keep it grounded, keep it within universe, make it make sense, but you could totally make this happen. And then we have the Tyranids from Warhammer. We have the Terminids from Helldivers. We can take some more inspired units from the Tyranids, bring them over into the lore of Helldivers, and make it work for the Terminids. So that's just my thoughts for that, and a great way of, every time that we get a major order or every time that we get a collab, bring in more enemy units that make sense thematically from those collaborations into it. And I know that is something that a lot of people would love to see on the battlefield. So last up, friends, and this is going to be within the realm of trying to make the community even stronger and going along with that, because Helldivers already has such a great community and I want to continue to foster that. And that's going to be the inclusion of, drumroll, clans. I think clans can make perfect sense in this. You don't need to do clan PvP or anything annoying like that, but what we could do is that for people that have communities like myself or like Thornton or many other people out there, we can have our own little clan community with icons that we can get, color palettes that are set in stone. Even friends, at Arrowhead, you guys can make your own dev and QA clan. So when you're showcasing videos, you're wearing certain aesthetics or colors that make sense. But also we can see clan impact on the global map. We can track progress. We could track progress of what the devs are doing within game or something like that. I just think that'd be a fun little thing to add on to the Super Destroyer hub, so that there's a little bit more of the fostering of community and interaction and engagement. And again, it's one of those quality of life features that I think is great. All right, well, there you have it. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you listening to me as we go through all the needs and wants of this game, as well as, maybe sharing some of your ideas to make the game better over time, or what you would add or what you would change. Well, if you did appreciate it, please be sure to like and subscribe, as it helps me grow over here, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.